All right, everybody. First, welcome back. Our first mini session of 2021. We're going to cover calendar year end for payroll. So that's going to be W-2s. We're going to talk about W-2s. We're talking about COVID wages. We will touch briefly on ACA, and it's simply because ACA is such a big section unto itself. I'm not going to be able to do it justice by covering it in an hour session today. If you did come here looking for a lot of ACA stuff, I'll briefly touch on that. There are at least a half a dozen webinars on the Tyler community. So if you want to go check those out, those are pretty good. Great light reading for you to do in your off time while you're at the office. We'll kind of cover a little bit of everything else going through. I'll kind of go off on a little side tangents and trying to cover as much stuff as I can in the hour to kind of make it worthwhile. There are some changes this year as it regards to W-2 processing. Again, we'll talk about the COVID wages, some changes that's going to go forward to 2021, and talk about some updated changes in how some of your stuff is filed. We'll cover that as well to the extent that I can do it here without an actual login to some of these places. So we'll go ahead and get started. If you haven't seen so already, I posted a couple documents in the chat. CYE Payroll, which is our little 2-page guide, which is if you've done W-2 processing before, that's a good primer, just to kind of remember the steps to go through. If you've never done calendar year end at your district, take a look at the bigger Tyler guide, the Infinite Visions guide. That's a 67-page guide, and it will cover all calendar year end stuff. Just doing payroll today. We have Jill's going to do 1099s for tomorrow's session. So if you're interested in seeing that, registration is still open. I believe we have about 90 people signed up for that one as well. So it'll keep everybody busy. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, everyone can see my Infinite Visions. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my Infinite Visions screen? Cool, awesome. All right, so W-2 processing calendar year and for payroll. The first thing that you're going to start off right off the bat is just go through and double check that to make sure that you have all those general configuration items taken care of. And when I say general configurations, these are the stuff that you shouldn't have to ever touch unless somebody went in and screwed it up at some point. But it's always good to double check. So we're going to walk through that. And we're going to start off in the general ledger. And I realize that if you're in payroll, you probably don't have access to the general ledger or the general ledger default settings. Just shoot an email over to someone who does and just say, hey, can you give me a screenshot and then I can make sure everything looks good in there. So in general ledger configuration, and then under the general ledger default settings, I'm going to open this up. And what I am looking for is I am looking for my federal and state EIN and the state ID format, and that the dates in here for all the fiscal dates are all correct, because we'll need those at some point a little bit later. Making sure all that information is correct. It should be. If it isn't, hopefully you found out way before now that stuff is all kind of screwed up. And that's all you need to do in the general ledger. And I'm going to close that, minimize that, and then I'll go into payroll. Under payroll, configuration, and payroll default settings. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to touch on that may not be specifically related to W-2s, but things that you should do anyway. First information is there's a little box down here towards the bottom that says download tax tables from web service. If you have not done this already, if you have not updated your taxes for 2021 already, I will walk through that process briefly because it's really just that quick to do. But make sure that this box is turned on here, and you should be good to go. All right, so that's the general setup stuff. Before you actually generate your W-2s, there's a couple of other things that you need to double check on. And first of all, you're going to take a look at your deductions itself, because your deductions, the way they feed into your W-2 is dependent upon how they are configured in deductions and benefits maintenance. So if I go into deductions and benefits maintenance, and I'm just going to scroll on down here to one of my taxes just so I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to open up my federal tax withholding. And in here, what I'm looking to verify is I'm looking to verify the box number and the box code and all this information on here to make sure that it is pointing to the correct one. So if your district uses multiple federal tax income, federal tax deductions, say you have, what is it, like 22.5% or something like that right now, I believe it's either 22 or 23. If you have like the bulk tax one, and then you have a normal tax deduction, make sure that they are both set up and configured to point to box 2. And a nice easy way I find to kind of check this out is I'm going to go out to the main grid. I will go to the W2 box field in my grid, and I will exclude that selection. And I'll just go down here. I'm going to sort this as well. I'll go down here and just make sure that all the items that are tied to the correct, all the items that are tied to the boxes, that they are in there and they are pointing to the correct box. So I have my federal tax, my Social Security, my Medicare, my state tax. I have a couple box 14 deductions, and several box 12 plans in here. So all those are in there. The only way you should really have to really kind of modify some of this is if you have a new deduction, maybe you haven't updated, maybe you have a new healthcare deduction, or maybe you have a new, like I said, maybe you added an additional federal tax deduction for those bulk tax rates. Either one of those is going to require you to come in here and kind of make sure that these items are updated. I do see a couple items popping up on the chat. I will try and hit those. If they don't ask, I'll stop for questions here and there throughout the process. But if one of my team members, one of you guys could just kind of chime in if anyone has a question, just kind of get those squared away so no one's waiting for long. Other than that, I'll stop for questions at some point, and anyone who has questions can ask at that point. All right, so the other thing to check is come into, I'm going to open up my state tax withholding. You'll also need to make sure that your state ID and your state ID format is in here for your state tax. This is the one place where it gets that state ID from. So just make sure that's correct in here. In Arizona, we are fortunate enough that our state tax doesn't change. And I'll say that with a grain of salt because it did change, but like 10 years ago or something like that, they changed it. But for the most part, it really doesn't change. So we don't have any tax tables for us to update. So lucky us. If you're in another state, one of those lesser states, you will notice that you have to update your tax tables for the state every freaking year. And that's just a pain in the butt. So we only have to do it for federal. The other thing I want to talk you through is updating your federal tax withholdings for 2021. And I'll just do this really quick. Like I said, in the general ledger default settings, you had that option you had the option to allow web update. In your federal tax deduction, you will need to turn on the option that says allow tax update. And it's this one little checkbox right here. You make sure it says allow tax update. And that is the only one that you will turn that on for. So if you have multiple federal tax deductions, that is the only one that you will turn it on for, is the one that has your actual federal tax table. You don't want to turn it on for, if you have the supplemental tax rate one, you don't want to turn it on for that because then it will override all the work that you've already put in there. So make sure that it is only on for the federal tax withholding. Once you have that on, you'll go up to actions and there's an option to update taxes. And I'll go ahead and click that and I'll ask you for which year you want to update it. Click on 2021. I believe these rates were published at the, I want to say around December 20th or something like that, just before Christmas. They were updated about a week before Christmas. So if you haven't done it yet, go in and do it. If you're not sure, go ahead and do it anyway, because it doesn't hurt. You can run it a million times. It will not hurt. Just make sure that it's done. You don't want to be that district that runs your first payroll of 2021 and realize you didn't update your taxes and then everything's wrong. And the corrections for that will absolutely just blow your mind. That's how you do that. And it's easy enough to do. Remember the old days, those of you that's been around for a while, the old days where you actually had to go in there and manually update all the tax information? Oh man, we are living in the future, I'll tell you that. Okay, so once you've updated that and you've took a look at your deductions and you make sure that they all match, the first thing that you want to do is go into reports, payroll reports, quarterly, annual, and you're going to run a quarterly accumulations report. So I'm going to open up my quarterly accumulations report. And you'll have in here, you can run this a quarter at a time, or you're running for all 4 quarters, whichever one happens to work for you. But I would start with all 4. By employee last name or employee social security number, it doesn't really matter. Last name is fine. It's just a quick, I think this report is only 8 pages. And what it will do is it will generate a report for you with all your employee tax information for the entirety of the year. So I'm going to go ahead and run this for 2020. And just give it a moment here. All right. I am going to go ahead and skip to the very end because that's the one I really care about at this point. And what I am looking for, I'm looking for a couple of key fields here. I'm looking for what is my total federal tax withheld for all of my employees? What is my federal wages, my Social Security wages, my Medicare wages? And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the A1Rs that you submitted. I'm sorry, not the A1Rs, your 941s that you've submitted for every quarter in 2020. So go out, whatever drawer you happen to have that paperwork filed in, or if you have it on a shared drive, whatever, go find that. And you pull out the paper form that you submitted. Do not go into Infinite Visions and just rerun the 941 report because it may not reflect what you actually submitted. So go find a copy of the one that you submitted, and you add up all those 941s, and you go and you compare them to this number. And if you are one of those extremely lucky individuals, your numbers match the numbers that are on here, which means the numbers that you submitted that says, this is what I withheld for quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. At the end of the year, they match the total for everything that I should have done through 2020. So if they match, perfect, pat yourself on the back because you've done an amazing job. You've essentially peaked for 2020, and it's not going to get any better for you from here on out. That's just how lucky you're going to be. Chances are, yes, you're going to have a little bit of quirkiness. It may not match. If it doesn't match, don't worry about it. It's not difficult to kind of troubleshoot and kind of figure out where it is. There's a couple of options that you can kind of go through. So I will walk through those really quickly here, and we'll kind of touch those a little bit later in the webinar as well. But what you can do, and what I would start doing is first exit back out of this report, and then go in there and rerun this quarterly accumulations report and run it 1 quarter at a time. Just do it 1 quarter at a time and just match up quarter by quarter with your 941s to make sure that the dollar amounts match. If they don't, then your problem is then that quarter. Then if they're not, once you find the quarter, that's when you start going into the payroll journals and you start looking period by pay period, where are you off and what dollar amount it is. It's a little bit of a sort of a finding a needle in a haystack, but as long as you start by quarter and you can narrow it down, say, hey, maybe I have 1 quarter that's off. And usually for situations like that, usually it's something where it's happened where you had someone whose paycheck was issued in March and then you voided it in April, and then you cross quarters with the void, and you've already done your reporting then, and maybe somebody lost a check 2 months down. All sorts of weird. Employees do the most amazing things with their pay. And unfortunately, the number one option is usually doesn't seem like it's always put it in your bank. It seems to get lost. Things happen. It's just part of the job, part of being a person, I guess. But go through quarter by quarter, narrow down what quarter it is, and then if you need to, narrow down what pay period it is. So it's not overly difficult once you just kind of know where do you start, but this is where you're going to start. So you'll have those quarterly accumulations. So you have everything balanced. Once you've had all those items up and all those numbers match, at that point, go ahead and move forward. Don't get too far into generate. Don't be in such a rush to generate W-2s that you do so to the point where you actually generate W-2s that are incorrect. So make sure your numbers match first before you move forward. Once you've done that and you've matched everything up, congratulations. We'll move on forward to W-2 processing. And I already have records in here. If you already have records in here, it's totally not unusual. Maybe you're in here screwing around or something. It happens. The great thing about W-2 records is that you can create, destroy, remove, delete, clear and do them as many times as you need to, as long as you can make sure that the information is right in the end. So I'm actually going to clear this screen here. I'm going to delete all records because I want to start fresh. Clears out my grid. And now I'm going to start. But first, I'm just going to go down the list here, and I'll kind of explain each one of these items. And I'll let you kind of know what these are, because I did find an undocumented feature in here that we had to find out about. It's kind of interesting. So first of all, the validation report. This is the easy peasy one. Once you run the validation report, and really the validation, the only thing it's validating is the employee's name too long? Is the employee's address too long? It doesn't validate the numbers that are in the report. It really just validates your address fields and things like that. So there's not a whole lot to it. It is one of the steps you're just going to have to go through. So I'm going to run the validation report, and I'll make sure that I input the calendar year. So we're in 2020. So just make sure you put it in. It's going to default to 2020. If you come in here and it does not say 2020, take a look. You are probably in the wrong year, and you're probably trying to generate W-2s in the wrong year. Don't do that. So just make sure it says 2020. Go ahead and run this. If you have a validation error, it will come up with a report. If you have no validation errors, it's just going to say there is nothing to report, and you can move on about your way. But there is one here. So it just say candy bar, address 1 is longer than 22 characters. So in the IRS file, when you generate the file and you generate and you send it to the SSA, there is a limit in the file name for certain fields. And for address, it's 22 characters. It doesn't mean that you can only put 22 characters on a W-2. It just means that when you send the file over to the SSA, that's all that's going to be on there. So try and abbreviate as much as possible. So let's go take a look at Candy Bar really quick. List of them generate employees. Yes, we saw that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go into employee maintenance. Open up Candy Bar. Thought I clicked it. There we go. All right, so it said her address is too long. So if I go into the mailing address, look, what do you know? It says my address is just way too long. Obviously, this is not a legitimate address. It's just something I put in there so you can have an example of what's in there. So you want to abbreviate as much as possible. So if you're spelling out north or west or avenue or street, try and abbreviate as much as you can. I believe Spike Road. I'm going to change that to the legitimate address. If it's too long, it is what it is. It's not going to break anything. It's just telling you that, hey, when I send this file off, it's going to truncate it at 22 characters. You don't want to make the address undeliverable. So you still want to make sure that there's enough in there for someone to kind of make sure they get the W-2s that you're mailing out to them. So don't make it undeliverable. But there is an option to print a full address or the full things. But if you need to, there's address 2 as well. So there's always ways to get around. All right. Once you work through the validation report and you've kind of got everything squared away where it's like, hey, this is as good as I'm going to get it, you go up to actions and you're going to generate records. And again, the input calendar year is going to be 2020. So click OK. And it's going to take a second. A lot of seconds.
Where's the sound effects, Mike?
I know. Hold on, hold on. Perfect. All right, done generating W-2 records. So your W-2 records, there's some cool things about this grid. First of all, every single field is in this grid. So if you needed to filter down or kind of, do some adjusting, or you really want to kind of narrow it down to certain employees or certain groups of employees, everything is on this grid that you can filter by. And everything on this grid is editable once you drill into the record. So I'm going to go into Candy Bar again, and we're just going to show how some of this looks. Looking at the employee W-2. So a couple things about these screens. First of all, this is all editable. Okay, so if for any reason you need to come in here and make a manual adjustment, the system will allow you to make that manual adjustment in here. Is also the reason why you only want certain people into this screen. So you want to make sure that all these items in here are still reflective of what the person actually did. So let's kind of go through it. So all the information here, the employee social security number, control number, all that's generic demographic stuff. Morgan, I did see your chat. We will make these files. I will email out all these files later. And when we get it posted on the YouTube, I'll put it on Dropbox and everything. So all those files are still going to be available. So if you're unable to download those files, don't worry, we will find a way to get them to you. Back to this, looking at the tabs here and just kind of go through here. So the basic tab, you have 3 columns in here. You have the actual amount, you have the adjustment, and your totals. If you need to make any sort of adjustments, for God's sake, use the adjustment column. It literally says the term adjustment in the name of the column. That is where you're going to make any changes. Now, granted, your changes should be very, very minimal. For the most part, anything that you change in the W-2, you are best served to go into the employee information, make any changes you need to there, and then come back into here and then just regenerate these records and have them reflected in the actual amount. But if you need to make any adjustments, make sure you put them in the adjustments column. Even though it allows you to put it in here, try to not do that. There's really not a whole lot of reason to fix an actual amount in there. And in my lifetime in dealing with W-2s, I've not found a valid reason to do it. So just don't do it. Okay. As a purveyor of the county government, I am telling you to not change the actual amounts. All right, next tab over, the additional. So this is the one that you're actually going to end up doing a little bit of work in this year. So you have your normal box 12 stuff. You're used to seeing all those, put in code DD for the medical deductions and things like that. The retirement plan, if you have ASRS, there's going to be a little checkbox. There is no box code for ASRS. Just remember that it's just a checkbox. So don't flip out. There's no place you need to key in any numbers. It's already in there for you. So just make sure that's in there. The big one this year is going to be this box 14. If your district paid anybody sick time or emergency sick time as related to the COVID relief plan, and this is the FFC, I'll call it the CRAP plan, the COVID Relief and Protection Act, FFCRA. If you paid anybody COVID wages, your employer is required to report those in box 14. Even though those wages were paid and are technically the dollar amounts are included in box 1 already. So whether you set up a supplemental pay or you however else you figured out to put it in there, it's included in box 1 already. But you need to report that you paid those wages in box 14. And it's in box 14 because those dollars don't mean anything. Those they are just for informational purposes only. They don't change anything. They don't adjust anything. It's just for reporting purposes. So that's what box 14 is. What you have to do, if you paid COVID wages, you have to do this one of 2 ways. You have to report this. And it really depends on how many people you have COVID wages that you're reporting for. So if it is a relatively minor amount of people, what you can do is you can come in here in box 14, I'll type COVID wages, and I will put an adjustment in there. I'll put in an adjustment in there, and I'll put an adjustment for however much I paid them. So if I paid $1,400, put $1,400 of COVID wages in there. That is how to manually adjust these W-2s. And the reason I'm saying putting in the adjustment column is because if for some reason you need to regenerate your W-2 records, you have the ability to save and then restore those saved adjustment amounts. So I'll show you how to do those in just a second, but make sure that you're putting them in box 14 in the adjustment column. The other option is if you have a lot of people, and I say it is really a lot of people, the other option, you can create a special deduction in deductions and benefits maintenance, tie it to box 14 that says COVID wages, assign it to those people that you paid COVID wages, and then import adjustments in bulk for those people. And it's really going to be dependent on how many people that you actually have that you pay COVID wages to. Here's the thing about it. This reporting requirement is only for 2020. So if you haven't created that deduction and you don't have a lot of people to manage right now, do not create another deduction in your system at this point. It is not worth the time. You all know, you've worked in payroll long enough that once you create a deduction, it takes an act of God to get rid of a deduction in Infinite Visions. I don't even need to call you out by name, but you know who you are because you have those deductions and the benefits, deductions and benefit maintenance that start with ZZ or never use or some crap like that because you can't get rid of them because they are tied to an employee. And it's very difficult to get rid of, and you have to wait a year out past life. Since there is no reporting requirement for this in 2021, don't create extra work for you unless you don't need to. So if you have COVID wages, it means you will have to go into every single employee that you paid those COVID wages to and manually make those adjustments on here. Yes, Alicia, that's exactly. You have to make those manual adjustments to every person. It's that you really kind of have to make the judgment call as whether it's a lot of work or not. Okay. All right. So once I have that adjustment here, I'm going to go ahead and move on through the other tabs. Your state tabs here. Again, these are stuff that you normally seen. You've looked at your own W-2 before. Some of you may have cheated and already generated your W-2s just to see, oh my God, how much money am I getting back this year? That's fine. Just make sure, hey, all your numbers are in here, your state wages in here. Do a sanity check on here. Come in here and take a look. Is anything way out of whack? That is the first indication that you say, hey, there may be something wrong with your box code, or there may be something wrong with your quarterly accumulations data in Infinite Visions. It happens. So just make sure you're doing a sanity check. If someone is making, if you have a teacher who's making $50,000 a year, you come in here and the state wages says like $90,000 a year, there may be an issue. Or maybe not. I've seen teachers with enough supplemental pays that literally doubles their salary in the course of a year, just depending on all these little extra duties things. So it's already a weird year. What's one more thing at this point? Kind of going through, if you have any local wages and local income tax and things like that. I don't know of anybody in Arizona that has that. Other states, if you live in, like I said, other lesser states, you may have situations like that where you need to worry about that. More local stuff. And notes. Notes are nice if you're making manual adjustments and you want to notate that you made a manual adjustment. This is a good place to put in here because these notes don't go anywhere. They are internal only. You don't have to worry about them showing up anywhere. They're not going to show up on the W-2. They are basically internal payroll notes for you to use on a person-by-person basis. The other thing I wanted to make sure I covered. If you have a ton of box 14 deductions and it goes beyond 5, what you'll have to do is actually create another W-2 record with just additional box 14 deductions. Hopefully no one has that many because it really kind of rolls up by type here. Same thing with box 12. If you have too many, you're going to have to create another W-2 record in here. Easy enough to do, but just be aware of that. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to save my COVID wages adjustments. So when you're doing those COVID wages, you're going to go down through all of your people here and you will manually add those COVID wages in box 14 as an adjustment. Once you've manually added all those in there and you have the correct dollar amounts, maybe you have a spreadsheet somewhere, or maybe you have a report somewhere, go up to actions. And there's an option on here that says save adjustments. Make sure you click save adjustments because if I save these, and it will overwrite any previous adjustments in there. If I save these, even if I have to delete all these records and regenerate them, I can come in here and retrieve adjustments and it puts all my box 14 information in there. You don't want to be in a situation where you're like, manually adding the same stuff over and over again. Put it in, manually add it once and then never have to do it again. So that's what those adjustments, and that's why it's important to use that adjustment column. Any questions so far? Just kind of looking at the chat. Try not to speed through too quick here. So anything reportable, okay, so will box 14 be including the 2/3 pay or only those that had up to 80 hours? So anything that is reportable under the, I keep forgetting it, the FFCRA, anything that is reportable is required to be on box 14. It's whatever happens to be, it's required to be in there. So just make sure that it's in there. Again, it is a reporting requirement that expires as of last week, 12/31. So you won't have to do it again for 2021. So don't put a whole lot of work in there, but it is required to put it in there. Good question. All righty. Moving on. So let's take a look here. So now that we've kind of gone through our records and you've kind of validated and you've done that sanity check and like, oh, everything looks good. It's cool. We can move on. You can run the W-2 totals report. Now, this is very similar to the quarterly accumulation report. Once you bundle all 4 quarters, it's going to be sort of the same information. So let's go ahead and run this totals report. And this is one of those things that you're going to want to save. Whether you save it on a HR share drive somewhere or you print it out and you attach it to whatever, this is one of those things you want to save because it really is a snapshot for the year. And what it's going to do, the nice thing and the big difference between this one and the quarterly accumulations report is it actually goes through and it sums up everything for box 12, everything for box 14. So you can see the nice thing in here. See where it says COVID wages under box 14? It'll have all the totals for all the adjustments that you made. So if you know that as a district, you paid out $300,000 in COVID wages, you're going to come in here and you should see $300,000 worth of COVID wages in here. There's your other sanity check for some of those items. So just make sure that this matches. You'll look at this and we'll tell you how many W-2s that you have, how many employees you have. That's again, another sanity check to make sure. It's going to pull all employees, anyone who had wages that you paid with a payday between January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, it's going to pull all the information. So even if you archive somebody, and then so some people are a little archive happy. So even if you archive somebody and they're not even on the grid in employee maintenance, it's going to pull a W-2 for that person. It'll be in there. So go ahead and save that, print that, do whatever you need to do. Actions. Once you've run the total report and you've made up those, and those dollar amounts all kind of match, you're now at the point where you can actually go ahead and print W-2s. So W-2s, if you haven't ordered the form or if you haven't seen the form, for Infinite Visions, W-2s is completely blank on the front side, and on the back side is just the instructions. And it's a 4-up form. You've all seen it plenty of times before. There's nothing special about it. The only thing that differentiates a W-2 from a blank piece of paper is the perforation that chops it in 4 pieces and the little tiny print instructions on the back that literally no one will ever read. That's it. There's nothing else going on with it. So if I print a 4-up, and I'm going to print just for an employee. So looking at the printing, you can print just for one person. You can print for everybody. I'm going to do a couple options here. So I'm just going to print just for Candy Bar because I don't want to sit here and wait forever just for this to print. You can print by employee group if you choose to. So maybe you want to get one group out the door for some reason, or maybe you need to redo somebody's W-2. You can do that. Sort by pay location, and I would urge you to say print check location on the W-2. So it's up there. We'll put it up there by the control code. And I believe it does show through on the windowed envelopes. If you have the windowed envelopes for W-2, it does show through. So it prints in the same order that your paychecks do. So if you're handing them out, they're already kind of sorted in order by check location, then by employee last name. So make sure that's in there. Make sure the entity name is correct. That's going to be what it prints, you know, what it's going to show on there. And that the employee's printed address, you could do either one. You could do the IRS compliant 22 characters or non-IRS compliant where it all fits on the W-2. Again, This does not affect anything other than how much space it takes up on the printed W-2. The employees can, it's not going to affect the file, and the file is really the only thing that matters as far as that 22 characters is concerned. So you can do either one. Non-IRS compliance, perfectly fine. And then there's the option to override print filtering. So by default, if you've seen it in employee maintenance, there's an option in employee maintenance that says print W-2. If that option is not selected, the system will not print a physical W-2 piece of paper. It will instead make it so it's available if you have the ESS portal. If you don't have the ESS portal, everybody should have that box checked, first of all. But if you do have the ESS portal, this is the employee self-service, this is the iVisions portal, whatever you want to call it. If you have that portal in there, you do not have to print a W-2 unless you want to. You can have that box checked. It will automatically print a W-2. If you don't check it, it won't. The other option is if you override print filtering, it will print everybody's W-2, regardless on whether or not that box is checked. For example, I get an electronic W-2 through my employer, through Maricopa County. Every year, they send me an email and say, your W-2 is ready. 2 weeks after they send me that email, I get an actual physical W-2 in the mail for them. It didn't even matter that I selected, yes, send me an electronic version. They physically sent me a W-2 as well. If you want to do that, and again, W-2s are cheap. It's really just paper processing. It's okay if you want to print them or not. It really doesn't matter, but it's just extra paper. So you can choose override print filtering. I'm going to turn this on because I don't know if Candy Bar actually has this option selected. Now click OK. It'll pop up in a report viewer. And in this report viewer will be every single employee. This will take a couple minutes to run. So this is one of those things that, hey, you're going to turn this on and then go get yourself a sandwich or something. But don't leave it unattended, or at least lock your computer before you walk away, because you don't want to send everybody's tax information. Just have it sitting on your desktop. Lock your computer before you walk away so no one else can get into it. It does, like I said, it does take a couple minutes. Once you have it, it is just an Infinite Visions report. You will load the W-2 stock into your printer and go and send it to the printer just like any other report that you would do. The one thing that, in addition, that I would ask you to do is to make sure that you save this document as a PDF once you were done. And the reason for that is once you've gotten to the point where you're ready to go and you're ready to give this out to your employees, you want to save that snapshot, that moment in time that says, as of this date at this time that I handed these out, these were my W-2s. Because like anything in Infinite Visions, if someone goes in there after the fact and changes something, then it changes that record of data. And then you no longer have the original snapshot of what you submitted or what you gave out to that employee that day. So always save a PDF of your W-2 somewhere. Just click on a PDF and I'll just save it. So I'm not going to save it because I don't really need it on here, but just save it as a PDF somewhere to make sure you have that copy. So if someone when someone loses their W-2, you can come up to you and say, oh, you can go back to that original PDF, open it up, find that person name, print that one page, and just make sure that it's there. All right. Once you've printed the W-2s, and it's going to be the 4-up, so there's option for printing 4-up or 4-up pressure sealed. I don't know of anyone that actually has a pressure sealed printer. I know they're out there. I haven't seen them. If you do, really cool, send me a picture. I would love to see how this thing works. I do love little gadgets. I don't have one, so, but send me a picture. Otherwise, everyone's just going to print the normal 4-up. The other option in here, save images. They kind of snuck this in here somewhere. It's not in help and it's not in the webinar, and they don't ever talk about what save images does. Save images is one of those undocumented features if you use some sort of outside document management software. And what it will do is it will actually save a PDF copy of every single W-2 for every single person. Will save as an individual PDF file into a particular shared directory, wherever you have it pointed to. General, unless you know how to use it already, it's not something that you'll ever need to touch. So just one of those things, just kind of know what it's there for and then ignore it. All right, so you've printed your W-2s, you're ready to go. So now you have to go through the process to actually file these W-2s. It's easy enough to do. You come into Make File. And under make file, you're going to put in all your information that you have from the SSA. So you put in your contact information. Make sure this phone number isn't good because it automatically sticks in there from whatever you had in there last year. So if you are new this year, or if your phone number changed, or if your email address changed, make sure that you're updating this thing. Just don't come in here and click OK. It's easy enough to do because if it's messed up, they will contact you. You just need to make sure that you have the correct information in here. So I put in my contact phone number. I don't have a fax because I live in 2021. Put in an email address and put in the destination for your W-2 wages report. Make sure it is a directory that you have access to. Make sure that that access is secure. So even if you save it locally to like a C drive or a share drive or an N drive or wherever you have it, your district, make sure that the access to that directory is limited to only those people who absolutely need access to it. Again, it is highly confidential information, and you would not be the first district to lose a W-2 file if you accidentally saved it somewhere or sent it to somebody who didn't need it. As a side note, if anyone asks you for a copy of the wages file, do not give that to them. The IRS will not ask you for a copy. They will tell you to upload, or the SSA will tell you to upload it. If your superintendent or if you're a business manager or someone, you get an email from someone that says, hey, can you send me a copy of our W-2 information because I want to look up some information. Assume you are being phished and they are trying to get your information. That is protected information and should not be divulged to anyone but the SSA. Entity name, user identification number, the SSA will give you this information. If you are resubmitting, say you had to submit W-2Cs and you had to resubmit a file, or there was a lot of issues with the file, if you need to resubmit, you can put that information in there. And of course, the other kind of information, self-prepared, yes, you're self-prepared. And then you're still in business at this point, so congratulations for that, but do not check that box. Then once you're done, go ahead and click OK. So I'm going to save this somewhere. I'm actually going to generate this file. And click OK. I hope everybody had a really good Christmas break. Hopefully you had too much to drink on New Year's Eve. Well, I thought this was going to be a little bit faster. Oh, okay, there we go. Once it's done, it'll say the W-2 file is created successfully. Perfect, which means you have now that wages file. And I'm just going to open it up here so you can see what it looks like. W-2 report. There's no extension on it. It just says W-2 report. If I open it in like a text editor with Notepad, see all my information in there, all in specially formatted. Do not touch anything in this file. It's already in correct format and everything needs to be there. So that's what it looks like. Just make sure that you, like I said, keep it secure. I'm actually going to delete that because I don't want that on my system any longer than I need to. All right, so you've made the file. Once you've made the file, you have a couple of other options that you can do. You can also create a SSN verification file. And if I had to pick a #1 call for what we get for W-2 generation, it's that someone mixed up a SSN verification file with a W-2 wages file. They are two separate files. They're two separate features. If you log into the SSA, there's an option on there to upload a SSN verification file, which you may do. And there's an option to upload your wages file. Two separate files, two separate formats. If you upload one and you get a whole ton of errors, I almost guarantee you 100% of the time is because you uploaded under the wrong option or you uploaded the wrong file. Now, it's not required to submit an SSN verification file. That's entirely voluntarily. And the only thing that it's really checking is checking, does the name on the file match the social security number that you had tied to it? So if you have someone whose name changed, maybe they got married or maybe they got divorced or maybe something happened, or maybe you had a typo and maybe they went by their name, they go by Mike, but their real name is Miguel. I don't know. But if it doesn't match the social security, that's when it's going to kick out in there. And it's just really kind of a heads up thing. By now, you've probably already found out if all your social security numbers are valid. You've all done the new hire stuff. You've done the E-Verify. You've done all that stuff. So it really shouldn't be too much of an issue. So if you want to do it, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, it's really kind of not worth the time. You can also upload, you can also do the AccuWage. So if you go to upload your information to the SSA, there's an option to upload an AccuWage. AccuWage, the only thing that the AccuWage option does is it verifies that your file is in the correct format that it needs to be. Nothing else. There's nothing else. And I'll tell you what, guess what? It's already in the correct format. So just skip that altogether. So if you see the option to do the AccuWage, just skip that altogether. Just go straight to the wages file and upload that and get it done and out of the way. So once you've uploaded this file, and you've done so by the end of this month, by January 31st, you've gotten the file out of the way, you've gotten the W-2s out in play, you have the option, if you have the ESS portal, you have the options to now go and update those items in the ESS portal. Now there's two options down here for that. There's update all to show in portal, update all to not show in portal, because remember back in the day when they first started this and you start working on your W-2s and there's always that one employee that's waiting for their W-2s with bated breath and is refreshing your ESS portal every 5 minutes to see, is my W-2 out there? Is my W-2 out there? Because guaranteed they will find it before you ever get an email out to them saying that their W-2 is available. They're just psychic like that. So you now have the option whether or not you want to show that, if it's ready to show in the portal or not. So if I know that these are ready to show in the portal, so I'm going to go ahead and click on update all to show in portal. This will generate W-2, marks all records. Yes. And it's going through. I'm not actually going to click this button because I don't want to wait for it. And it's going to take a couple minutes for kind of generate all these W-2s, because what it's doing is generating the W-2s and it's tying it to those employees. So go ahead and click cancel on there. Once you upload the show in portal, then you're actually going to have to go to your portal and make sure that there's a place where they can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to go to my ESS portal. And I will log into the portal. So you have to log in as someone who has editing rights to some of these pages. It may not be your normal employee login. Every district should have sort of an admin or a host login where they can do where they can do all the updates for this. You can delegate the ability to edit some of these pages to certain people. So just make sure that someone at your district has access to it. Somebody knows who that person is, just go find them. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in. And I'll log in as our host address. If I remember the password. Cool. All right, so I'm logged in. I know that I'm logged in as an editor because I now see the little gray bars down the side here. That's your little editing page. There's a specific name, I forget what it was. And this is if you are using DNN 9. If you have an older portal, I think DNN 7 is the one before, it looks a little bit different. If you have the newer portal, the TESS, you don't even need to do this part. It's automatically sort of configured for you. We'll get to that a little bit later. So but if you have DNN 9 or one of the DNN portals, it'll be something similar to this. So I'm going to go to my payroll tax information and my employee W-2s. Once I'm on this page, I'm going to click the edit button down here at the bottom. And I will add a new module. So there's add a module, add an existing module, or page setting. You don't want to add an existing module because what it does is it just tries to pull that module from another page that already exists on your site. We're going to add a brand new module. So we're going to add a new module. And I'm going to search for W-2. And we'll add, it says WMG employee W-2, call back to Windsor Management Group. And I'm going to drag it right here at the top. Then we'll go to settings. Let me go back. We'll walk through that a little bit more. So once I'm on the module, and I'm still in edit mode here because I can see a little close button down here. So I'm still in edit mode. There is a move button where I can kind of move this particular screen around. And there's a settings button. So I'm going to go to settings here. And my module title, first I'm going to change this to say 2020 W-2 information. Then on the WMG W2 settings, I will hit the connection group that I'm tying this to. So I created the W2s in my 2021 connection group. So I will select there, click update. And now I can close the edit mode and boom, now your W2s are now live on the interwebs. So at that point, your employees can start downloading their W2s from here, just like they would. And if you have any of the DNN portals, which are any of these ones that we're seeing here, you'll have a different module for every single year in here that you want W2s available for. So if you want to keep like 5 years worth of W2s on there, you're welcome to do that. You just need to add a different module, make sure it's pointing to the right year. If you have the new Tyler ESS, which is the one that we're going to talk about going to for districts that we host, we'll talk about that on Thursday. If you're going to that, then it kind of manages all that stuff in one place and you don't need to add these modules. So that's the kind of nice thing about that. So that's how you go ahead and add those modules in there. All right, so now your W-2s are out in the wild. You submitted into the SSA. You gave them out to your employees. You've put them out on your interwebs here. And I'm going to go ahead and log out of the iVisions portal. All right, the last thing you need to do, and I always say the last thing, but one of the last things you need to do is after you've submitted your wages off to your IRS and you've kind of got them out the door, don't forget to turn around and submit those over to the Arizona Department of Revenue. And here's the cool thing is, this is the first year where you can actually upload your wages file, the same wages file that you submitted to the SSA. You can actually upload that file to the Arizona Department of Revenue. How you do that, in previous years past, you had to put it on CD and you mail it in with your A1R and like a freaking caveman. This year is the first year you can actually upload the file. So I'm going to open up one of my web browsers, and the site is aztaxes.gov. And in here, there's an option down here at the bottom that says log in to AZ Taxes. And again, this is the Arizona Department of Revenue. And you'll put your business user login pattern. So if you don't have one, it's okay. The chances are, if you've never had to do this or if you've never seen these pages before, you might not have one. I guarantee you someone at your district does have a login for this site. And there's two types of users. There is a primary user and there's a delegate user. Primary user is the person at your district whose login does everything. They can go into anything and do everywhere. And then there's a delegate user where that person determines, all right, you have access to upload W-2 information. You have access to upload use tax information. Because use tax stuff is already required to be uploaded, that's why I know somebody at your district already has a login for some of this stuff. If you need new users, if you've not been in there, or you don't know who it is, you can click on new user enrollment and kind of go through the process to kind of get that thing started. But this is where you can go and you can actually upload your W-2 information for the first time. And again, this is effective tax year 2020. If you are not there yet and you're scrambling and you're trying to get things and you don't know, I don't know how to get the user, you need some help. 2020 is the last year that they will allow you to send in a CD. So if you need to send in a CD and maybe you don't have internet out where you are, I don't know. If you need to send in a CD, you can still do that, but 2020 is the last year that they're going to allow you to do that. Beginning next year, it is the only option that's going to be available. So you might as well get used to it now. And since it's new this year, you at least have a year to learn or forget whatever it is you're going to learn to put in this tax information. So just make sure that that stuff is there. All right. Any questions so far? I know we've kind of gone through a lot. It's we ate through an hour really, really quick here. I want to ask for a question. I do have, before I get to questions, I do have a couple other things I do want to touch on really, really quick here. First of all, things that you need to change beginning 2021. We started off, we did the update your taxes, update your federal taxes already. You've already done that. I've kind of walked you through that. If you haven't done that, go do it. If you're not sure if you've done that, go do it anyway. Just make sure that they're correct. The other thing that you will need to do is that you will need to update your Social Security max for calendar year 21. If you haven't done that already, you have a few months before it really becomes crucial. But what I'm talking about, if I go into deductions and benefits maintenance, I'm going to go down to my FICA Social Security. And in here, I'm going to open up my Social Security line item, and my employee maximum for this year is $8,853.60. Because the maximum taxable wage basis for Social Security this year is now $142,800. So which means your employees will pay Social Security wages, Social Security up to $142,000 of their taxable wages. Who's going to hit that? Superintendent or two is going to hit that. Most people, you already know who those people are that hit it, because they hit it every year, probably maybe around October, they start hitting it, usually by December. You have those people that kind of hit the Social Security max. It goes up a little bit this year, so maybe you weed out some of the people, but you do need to make sure you put that max in there. You don't want to leave it too low, because if you leave it too low, it's going to stop coming out earlier. And you don't want that to happen, because you don't want to be the person that's going to have to call it the superintendent in February and say, yo, that W-2 we gave you, we're going to need you to kind of just rip up and throw it away because it's all incorrect. You don't want to be that person. You never want to be that person. So just make sure that you're going in here and you're updating this correctly. Once you update the employee max in there, click OK. The other thing I'm going to tell you to do, because sometimes it becomes an issue. Okay, it's going to take a moment here. All right, so now we kind of updated that, and go into FICA Social Security again. And there's an action, and I would recommend that you do this because we've run into situations in the past where it didn't go through correctly, but action, update employee deduction lines. And what it will do is it will go through and double check to make sure all the employee deduction lines are selected. The other thing, and this will be the last thing I kind of leave you with, if I go into employees and then employee deductions and benefits, and I'm just going to look at their FICA Social Security. And what I want to pull up here is deduction line. And what I should do, or what you should do, is, assuming you're using a deduction line for Social Security, or everyone should be using a deduction line. There's really only one amount that you're going to put in there. Go through it and make sure that everybody that is in your system that is getting paid has a deduction line for federal Social Security. For example, this one here, even though it's not active, maybe they're no longer employed, or maybe they were a student. You put this in here, make sure the deduction line is there. If it is not there, it means whatever change you did to the Social Security max, or whatever change you do for Social Security going forward, is not going to be reflected for that employee. So just kind of make sure, and I'm just going to sort this ascending. I'll see a handful of employees do not have a deduction line in there. So just make sure that those are reflective of what they actually need to be. See, all right. Oh, we do have a question. So in the exempt box on the tax tables, what is the amount under federal tax setup and deduction maintenance? So are you talking about, I go into W-2, oh, sorry, deduction benefits maintenance, federal taxes, and setup, 2021. Oh, apparently I did not update the taxes for this. My bad. All right, so hold on. So let me do this really quick. I thought I did this already. Update taxes. All right, that's how quick it is. All right, so here is the information. The exemption amount, I assume the $4,300 is what you're talking about, Brenda. That's the exemption amount for this year. If you have employees that submit the new W-2, obviously that's going to be it processes a little bit different if they submitted, I'm sorry, not a W-2, a W-4. Submitted a W-4 that changed last January, if they submitted that, so it doesn't come into play as much. But yeah, it's going to put in, as long as you do the update taxes option, it's going to put all those dollar amounts in there. I remember several years ago, you could update taxes, but for some reason it didn't put the exemption amount in there. You would need to go in there and manually do that. That was fixed, I believe, last year or the year before. So everything is in there. So as long as you run through the process, and you saw it was really quick, it was probably the quickest thing I've done here. It put all that stuff in there. And if I change this to standard, yep. So it kind of puts all that information in there. So there you go. That's all I have for you. It took way longer than I thought it was going to get through. So make sure you update all this stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Shoot us an email. It's Mike Martinez at maricopa.gov, or you send it to fss@maricopa.gov. That's Financial System Support, FSS@maricopa.gov. One of those people will be happy to help you. That's probably the best way to get a hold of anybody. I'm kind of in and out. We are down to a skeleton crew, and right now in office, so it's kind of tough. And then we had several people in our office that were all on quarantine for Christmas break, so we didn't get a whole lot of stuff done. But thank you, everybody, for attending today. I hope to see some of the same faces. I'm talking about just those people with cameras, or same not faces. For those people that are really shy, it's totally okay. Not everybody can be as pretty as me. Not everybody can have this ridiculously awesome quarantine beard going on. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a great time. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great week. We'll have 1099s tomorrow, so be back and have a good one.